Hi, this is Drew Jones of Drew's Guitar Shop in Seattle, Washington, and today I wanted to do a quick little video about cleaning Gibson style three-way switches like the one that I have here. Guitar components have a tendency over time to develop corrosion, as in any kind of metal that's exposed to air tends to develop some kind of oxidation in it. The metals that we use in guitar components and electronic components in general are some of these metals that tend to absorb oxygen and form an oxide layer. And that's sometimes some of the stuff that we're looking at, and sometimes we are also looking at, just dirt, animal hair, dead skin cells, all this fuzz that kind of comes up when you vacuum your carpet. That stuff can kind of work its way into your guitar and cause things to kind of crud up after a while, especially if you've got like an arch top with like open F holes or something like that where dust can just collect inside it. I don't know if you've ever looked inside an acoustic guitar and seen just a big old dust bunny hanging out in there, but that's a pretty common thing to see. We live in a dusty world, and so there's all kinds of that stuff that can collect in there, and there's all kinds of oxides that develop over time. So we're going to talk about the switch design for a minute. If you look over here, there's a little divot, a little dimple, and over here there's another matching little dimple. And if you let me put a white backing on here so you can really see this work. When you flip the switch, there's another little dimple in there that one comes in contact with, and that's what actually will turn a pickup on or off in the circuit. So what we need to do is we need to get in there and clean those dimples. The way that I like to do this is I like to use a strip of paper. This is off of an index card. It's nothing special. But the thing is that all paper is kind of abrasive. It's why we don't want to use paper towels to scrub down our guitar finish, because it has fibers in it that are actually kind of hard and will kind of, get into a surface and scratch it up. So this is going to be kind of a surface that we use as a rough surface, kind of like a little micro file in there, kind of getting rid of that corrosion layer in there and clearing out some dust. And in order to kind of make that work, we're going to use some deoxit. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and kind of lightly just tap the surface of that with just a little bit of deoxit, and it soaks right through to the other side. It's a little difficult for you to see the color here on the camera. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and take this and I'm going to open it up on one side. So you see there, I've got it opened up, and I'm just going to drop that paper down in there, get it in between those two dimples, and once I have it there, I'm just going to work this paper back and forth. So you can see that that's making good contact there. And you can even apply a little bit of pressure with your finger to that dimple to like really get some pressure on that paper. And yeah, that's pretty much how we're going to do it. And when you pull that out, you see that little layer of crud that you pulled out. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of something on there. Just the plain metal, if it's copper, will kind of color onto a piece of paper as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean if you pull a line out of there that it's super corroded. But in this case, that's kind of a darker line, so I'm thinking that there was probably some crud on there. It's probably a good idea that we're doing this. Now, as to when you would know to clean a switch like this, it's kind of normal-ish for a Gibson style switch to pop a little bit when you flip it. There's a lot of times just a little bit of a crack when it changes positions. And so if you're hearing something really minor like that, I don't know necessarily that I would, want to pull the whole thing out and want to clean it. You can see that other line there. It's pretty dark. But if you're getting something more severe, like, some real crackling and, maybe some intermittent response, this is definitely something that you want to do. And also, I advise, taking doing this cleaning before you throw the switch away. Like if you have a switch that you think is bad, I would try cleaning it first and seeing if it comes around, because a lot of times they will. These do go bad though, and I'll show you kind of how they go bad. So you see how this is kind of its default mode is under tension. These two pieces of metal in here are under tension by default, and when you push this, this actually opens up. So what will happen eventually is that if you keep this guitar in this setting, eventually this piece of metal over here will kind of gain some memory, and it won't want to make contact with that other little dimple in there. And so, you know, over time, as this gets used more and more, that metal will develop more memory, and that will cause that to go bad eventually. So that is what really wears out one of these three-way switches, is just that that metal fatigue, metal memory. It tends to happen a lot less on Gibson switches, though, or sorry, it tends to happen a lot less on Fender switches. But Fender switches are not immune to this sort of thing, especially the kind of like little circuit board switches that you tend to see in a lot of the cheaper Fender knockoffs. Those are actually pretty prone to going bad, kind of in a similar sort of way, and are, you know, much harder to see when they do. These you can kind of just take it out and just eyeball it, you know, put something light behind it like that, and just kind of see whether or not those are making contact. But yeah, that's basically how I would go about cleaning one of these switches. You can see that that did a pretty good job, and you know, that's just a tiny little strip of paper, kind of thick paper. Again, this came from like an index card. You could also probably use a business card, or maybe a thin, really thin strip of cardboard, or something like that. Cardstock basically is what I would look for. But yeah, it did a pretty good job, and this is how I typically do it. So this has been Drew Jones of Drew's Guitar Shop in Seattle, Washington. If you would like to get a hold of me, there's a link to my website in the description of the video, and there's also a link to my Ko-Fi and my Patreon. And if you found this video helpful and you want to kick me a few bucks, I would sure appreciate that. Otherwise, check out the rest of my channel and the rest of my videos, and thank you for watching this one, and have a great day.